Welcome to the Hockey Writers Union Junction, a weekly show from our Columbus Blue Jackets insider, Mark Scheig, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, he covers everything that happens with the Jackets. So get ready. It's time for another get-together at Union Junction.
All right, Nick, welcome to Draft Day 2022, July the 7th. The big day is here. The center of the hockey world is in Montreal at the Bell Center for some craziness, some fireworks. And welcome to Union Junction. This is the last show before the draft, before free agency begins. And we're going to try and pack as much into 30 minutes as we possibly can. But before we do that, and of course, we always bring it up every week. Nick, tell our viewers, what do we bring up every week here on the show?
It has to do with lacing up the skates, metaphorically, lacing up the skates on your mind.
Yeah.
Maybe they need me to make up some slogans. But the morning skate email that goes out every day.
Every day, like clockwork, delivered to your inbox, probably be the first thing you see when you open your email in the morning. Because if you're like me, you wake up, you check your email.
Yeah, for sure.
It's right there.
We have so many dedicated writers, including the legend, the franchise, Mark Scheig. Those are going to be going directly to your inbox. Whatever the latest is from Mark Scheig, legend, future Hockey Hall of Fame journalist,
right?
Mark Scheig. No, he doesn't like when I pump up his ego like this, but yeah, it's great stuff from the writers at the Hockey Writers, and always up to date.
Always. Morningskate.io. That's where you go. Sign up. You will not miss anything. But we got a lot. We got a lot to get to, Nick. 30 minutes or less to go over. Let's just jump right into this because we're gonna get some opinions. We're gonna talk about the draft. We're gonna talk about free agency, what we think might happen, maybe a couple predictions, maybe some words that I've heard that could be going down. Stay tuned for that. But let's jump in with Adam Boqvist. So late in the afternoon on Wednesday, the Blue Jackets announced 3 years, $2.6 million AAV for pending RFA Adam Boqvist. Your first impression, Nick?
It's excellent to see another name checked off the list for a reasonable price tag. I think this is a great bridge deal. We saw a little bit of what Boqvist could do last year, scoring like a beast in terms of goal production anyways, at least. Now he gets a longer tryout, 3 years. That's great. I think we look at this deal kind of like the Tarasov deal, where that third year could look really, really nice. But it looks great for me. What do you think, Mark?
Doesn't that trade look better and better every passing moment now?
Well, especially by the time we see what 6 is in the draft, it's going to look probably pretty fantastic.
Oh gosh, right. So if one of the D, Juracek or Nemec, is there and they grab him to be able to add more or less a Seth Jones replacement, so you get 6 OA, you get Cole Sillinger, you get Adam Boqvist at the second and third year of that deal could be just a real bargain if he did his work at the gym, gets better defensively, and continues to produce the offense that he's expected to produce. It's such a steal of a deal. It's a great number to be able to land at least to this point so far. Boqvist, Roslovic, they've done a really nice job, fair deals, both sides to those that they've been able to sign. So this is they've done a really nice job so far with the offseason plan. Obviously, the big one in Laine to go. We'll talk about him in a little bit, but love every part of this deal from a Blue Jackets perspective. It gives Boqvist an opportunity to, take the next steps overall, and it'll set him up for possibly a bigger payday later. And, if the Blue Jackets get their way, they can get him for a long time as well. So nothing to not like about this, to be honest with you.
Exactly. It's a great looking contract.
Absolutely it is. So speaking of the draft, we were just talking about 6 OA, the 6th overall pick. Tell you what, Jarmo Kekalainen spoke on Wednesday, and the one thing that he did say, there's a few things that we'll talk about. The one thing he did say was he did not think that they were going to trade both 6 and 12. He also acknowledged that there's a lot of things out kind of being at least discussed, the kicking of the tires wise, for possible trades involving one of those picks with young players. So my question for you here is, do you think right now they make both picks, or do you see the possibility that one of them turns into a young player with control? Like, where do you think they go here?
I would say 100% they're picking at number 6. I would say unless like a huge deal comes up for number 6,
Yeah.
I would say that's pretty well a lock. But 12, like we've seen, there's been some speculation out there. 12 could be in play, and we've seen Jarmo Kekalainen in the past be able to pull the trigger on those blockbuster deals. Whether he even uses that to trade back and gain some more assets if the player that he sees that they like is still available later in the draft, they think. Mm-hmm. That could be a possibility, but I would say that 12 is definitely in play in some way. What do you think?
I agree with that. I think that unless they're able to trade up, unless the price has to come dramatically down, I think from where the Coyotes, where the Devils are 2 and 3, Jarmo said he did not want to trade 6 and 12 if he could help it. Because you take a look at the draft value charts, we've talked about those in different points in some articles, and holding 6 and 12 combined actually is better than having 3rd overall. So in terms of the draft value chart, if you look at that. So you got to imagine that you're right. Unless something huge comes along, 6 is probably going to be their pick. 12, there's a lot of uncertainty. He acknowledged that. He even went as far as saying that there's going to be some potential oohs and ahs in the top 10. But it really comes down to their list. He said that there's going to be around 100 players or so that make their list. And if a guy is high enough on their list at 12, they'll make that pick. But that's going to kind of segue into our next topic, which is Jakob Chychrun. That kind of has resurfaced. There was some talk at the trade deadline that their Blue Jackets would be interested. And then credit to Brian Hedger for indicating that the teams are talking about that again. But then late on Wednesday, there was talk again from Hedger saying that that's cooled off a little bit. Should the Blue Jackets pursue Jakob Chychrun? Nick?
Really, when I look across the NHL, I can't find many teams that shouldn't pursue Jakob Chychrun. I mean, this is a defenseman that pretty much every team would love to have on their roster.
Yeah.
The question is the price going to be right for the Blue Jackets? I think if you package 12 with something else and that's within your acceptable amount, then sure, I would say that's a reasonable price to pay. A young defenseman with some term, like you've mentioned, he could be a franchise cornerstone that they're looking for on the blue line. I mean, you have Zach Werenski and Jakob Chychrun. They're looking pretty dangerous on the back end, whereas last, couple months ago, we're thinking, where are they going to go on that back end? What do you think?
He's what they're looking for. There's no question about that. I'm just not sure they're ready to pay the price to get him. I think the price is still very high for him. I know back at the trade deadline, it was 4 premium pieces of some combination, and it might be that, maybe a little bit less, but it's still, when you're at where the Blue Jackets are at right now, where they've started the reset process, they're ready to build, giving up significant pieces like that. I mean, you get control, but he could walk after that time. Like, are you willing to pay that price knowing that he's not there for the next 7-8 years yet?
Yeah,
that's the
true.
only question that I would have. Not sure
at this point in their development, it's probably not right to be making those massive blockbuster deals. That's normally, you normally see teams, as soon as they start making the playoffs, then they start looking at the trade market as opposed to building their core through the trade market.
Or when we're going to talk free agency too a little bit, and I wondered, I think there's some opportunity where you can maybe sign a guy or two to a cheap deal that can kind of be a placeholder as well. Because I think the defensive core within the team, I think, doesn't get enough credit. I mean, I know it's not like loaded with top heavy guys, but there's certainly enough depth there that it's not as bad looking as it might seem on the surface. But I don't think they should go after Chychrun unless that price comes down.
For sure.
But now the trade market, we've talked about it a little bit here with the draft. There's still a glut of wingers on the Columbus Blue Jackets. So you know that at some point they want the young guys to be able to play in premium roles. So you makes you wonder about Oliver Bjorkstrand. It makes you wonder about Gustav Nyquist, guys that are part of leadership, great to be around, help the young guys out a lot. But at some point there is a glut and they have to do something. Could you see a bigger trade involving one of the veterans or something to kind of get rid of that logjam of wingers?
Well, yeah. I think Kekalainen is conditioned anyone watching his team to never really get too comfortable around the draft. That's generally when all the big moves are made.
Yep.
I don't know. See, exactly. We don't know what their target would be right now. Like Chychrun could be a target. Do the Coyotes really want Oliver Bjorkstrand when they're in the middle of their rebuild? You know, do they really want Gustav Nyquist when they're still, digging for the trenches next year, it looks like?
Mm-hmm.
That's a question that you got to really figure out to see if there's any real targets for those wingers and any targets that the Blue Jackets would want where it would really line up. I don't really see one glaringly obvious, but maybe you do.
I've thought about that a little bit. It's hard to say, honestly. It's not really seeing too much out there in the way of weakness, but I do see that there's an opportunity there if they want to go after a bigger defenseman, let's say. So, if the Chychrun thing is off, or if there's another defenseman out there that is kind of a bigger name in the trade market, I could see a swap. If you have to include Bjorkstrand or something, he's still a really, really good player. So you got to get premium to get back. So, but if you're able to get a top end, say, right shot defenseman that can help not only next year, that's the one thing Kekalainen said. It's not just about next year. It's about next year and the future as well. So it would have to be a move that makes sense. Like the Atkinson for Voracek deal made sense because it was pretty even on dollars. Voracek had one less year, even though he was a higher AAV, but it changed the dynamic of the team. And he's shown a willingness to be able to do that. The question here isn't going to be if they do something on defense, it's what they do on defense. And they have a ways to do it. They can combine draft picks. They can combine wingers. There's a lot in the fire. It's just, does any of it actually come to fruition? We'll see. But in terms of possibilities, they got a lot going on out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we jump to free agency, Nick, let's ask you your prediction. Assuming they make the picks, who do you think becomes a Blue Jacket tonight?
If one of those D-men is up for grabs at 6, I think that's an easy,
wholeheartedly
bet.
Agree with you more.
And 12's really going to be the wild card. Yeah. Like every single scout that I've seen has said, after 2 or 3 or after 3, it's like anybody could go anywhere pretty much. There's a crop of players that are going to go there, but in the order that they go is completely going to be a wild card tomorrow.
I'll share what I think could happen as a prediction. All right. So Montreal's one. I talked to a few people in Montreal. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So that's a good job by Kent Hughes to be able to kind of put Fort Knox all over what they're going to do. They might not even know yet because they still have interviews to do. But it's between Wright and Slafkovsky. Personally, they should take Shane Wright. I think it's a mistake to take Slafkovsky first overall. If he's really the target, you might try to explore a trade down, honestly. But that's my own take with that. If they take Wright, then that means Slafkovsky would go to New Jersey. I would expect the Coyotes to take Logan Cooley in that scenario. And then Philadelphia and Seattle, Philadelphia would have the 2 defensemen. I think that they would each take the 2 defensemen. Philadelphia is a bit of a wild card. There's been some talk about some of the centers like Savoie and Cutter Gauthier that they might take a look at. So I think we need to expect the unexpected. But I think for 6, if Juracek is there, it's an obvious pick. If Nemec is there, I think it's an obvious pick. Like you said, I think Gautier's in that conversation too. If the first 5 go and both D are gone, they have to get a center with one of the picks, and that's why I think they'll either take Gauthier at 6 with D gone, or they take a guy like Connor Geekie at 12 who has the size and the skill to go with it. But they have to, I think, leave with at least one center. And then the other one, like you said, is a wild card. And Yarmo even said himself, they'll wait till the 5th pick to see what they do with 6, and they'll wait till the 11th pick to see what they do with 12, because they have to see what other teams do. So it's really hard to pinpoint right now.
Yeah, this is definitely not cookie cutter drafts where we know the top 10 selections.
Not at all. Your guess is as good as mine, is as good as anybody else's. The Blue Jackets, like every other team, they're in the same boat.
For sure.
That's what makes for chaos, and that's why we tune in.
That's why we love the draft. Oh my gosh. This is like Christmas.
This is Christmas time. So speaking of Christmas time for Blue Jackets fans, Patrik Laine. So we'll give credit to Rothman and Ice, 97.1 The Fan in Columbus. Jarmo Kekalainen joined the show after our availability. He wasn't asked about Laine during the availability, but he was asked about him on the radio show, Rothman and Ice. And he basically said, I quote, "work in progress," when asked about how the negotiations are going, but did go as far as saying that things are positive. You know, he really didn't get too much into detail in that, but he said it's a work in progress. I don't know about you. It doesn't change my opinion. They got plenty of time still. We've talked about it here. Still nothing to worry about. I kind of expected to hear that from the general manager, given that there's been no news. Is that the way you see it too?
Yeah, exactly the same. This is pretty well status quo. Just kind of reaffirming my position, at least, and our position, that things are probably going to work out here.
Yeah, I agree. Really not much more to say at this point. I mean, I feel like that the deal will get done eventually. It might get close to camp, so don't think that it's going to come in the next day or two unless things change. But it does point to at least there being some separation in terms of what they think a fair contract is. All standard practice. Go outside and play for a little bit. They'll eventually get it figured out.
Yeah, and there was another article that was done, a Finnish interview that, man, God bless Sila for these Finnish translations. She's awesome. But yeah, there was another one where he was basically saying it's different than Winnipeg. I like it more than Winnipeg. And so another just reaffirmation to me that he's likely to re-sign, and he really likes Columbus.
It will happen in the right time, fans. So just, enjoy the fact that it's this kind of situation and not something more hostile. That's what you should be focused on right now.
Yeah, not Josh Anderson 2.0.
Speaking of Anderson, separate topic, he might be dealt from Montreal. We'll see how that goes, but so let's go to free agents though. We got just a few minutes left here, so we want to talk about this because the next time we record will be the day after free agency begins, is when the next show will drop. So the Blue Jackets are going to be in on free agency, whether it be through some trades, maybe possibly some signings. What do you feel like they should target in free agency, Nick, when it starts?
Well, we've talked about it. One of those big wig defensemen, Josh Manson, would that's the guy that, right-handed, just a beast, throws hits like you wouldn't believe.
Penalty killer.
That's what the Blue Jackets defense needs. And he's 29. He's got lots of experience in the league, a veteran presence. I mean, I looked at it last year. Gavrikov was the most, he was the oldest defenseman to play more than half the team's games.
Yep.
He's 26. He's been in the league for 3 years. I mean, Werenski's, he's been around for forever, but he's still only 24. Some veteran experience leadership could help stabilize, some of those other pieces, those younger pieces on the D core.
Kekalainen was asked about the defense during his availability. He was interesting. He said that the handedness doesn't matter. If his 6 best defensemen were all lefties, he'd roll with his 6 best. I thought that was interesting, just for him to be able to admit that when it comes to deciding, who to target, what to look for, how to address that defense. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a righty. They're going to go after who they feel like is the best fit. And he even went as far as saying that Gavrikov could play the right side too. So does that open the possibility that you put Werenski and Gavrikov on the same pair? If you want to have Gavrikov play the right side, he at least opened the possibility of that with the way he spoke on Wednesday. Just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that would be an interesting pair if they added another piece who they could, really reliably keep on that second pair. Man, that'd be cool.
And that the Matthew Olivier trade happened. They brought on a bigger guy. They added the forward core. But I just wonder, do you feel like that there's still a need for a depth, solid power forward, someone that can bring more muscle in? Like, I feel like that they could use another guy there. What about you?
Yeah, the grinder enforcer role that was brought in through Olivier, it's not the same as a power forward who's, he's going to be throwing the body and still scoring, 15 to 20 goals a year. Olivier is not expected to score more than 10. So, he's going to be some muscle, but still adding a different dimension through a more power forward kind of guy, a Josh Anderson type.
Yep.
Would not expect them to add Anderson. Oh man. But that type of player would still be valuable to this team.
Yeah, they need to be able to add muscle, protect the guys. I know Werenski last year said that was one thing that they know as a team they can improve on, is sticking up for each other. And one of the things you can do, you can bring someone on who can do that. That'll be a big help for the team for sure. So possibly power forward. We talked about the defense. I'd still watch a goalie. I still think that they're going to look at just organizational depth at this point. So maybe not necessarily someone who's going to play with the Blue Jackets. They already pretty much have that figured out. But, the Matisse Kovacs thing just was the 1 year on the 4th. And, they still have to account for depth. So I would not be surprised if something like that happens too. Before we end the show with shenanigans, we're going to have a chance to give some of our bold predictions for what's going to happen in the week to come here. Got to talk about one other thing that Kekalainen spoke of on Wednesday. He was asked about the Russian situation. And Nick, what he said was that, they make their list, but they make it based on hockey ability. He said that they actually didn't divert from what they normally do, and the list was still created from hockey ability in his words. So just hearing that, could we see the possibility that if the best player available is Russian, so like Danila Yurov is one guy, and I know I always butcher the last name of Miroshnichenko, I believe. I always butcher that, so sorry about that. But apparently they're in North America already. So could you see the Blue Jackets drafting one of them if they're high enough on the list? I think so, based on Kekalainen's comments. Do you?
Yeah. Kekalainen is not one to, get into the what I mean? He's not one to get distracted by stuff like that. He'll pick the best player that he thinks is available and the best person that he thinks is available.
And he acknowledges it's obviously a very tough situation. Who knows what's going on, and just can't even begin to imagine the Fedotov situation and now possibly Kirill Kaprizov. And so obviously wait to see what transpires out of there. But it's obviously it's a big question that a lot of teams are going to have to answer. And it'll be interesting to see at what point teams start to consider them. Will some of these guys that are top 10 talents fall out, and how far will they fall?
And that could really benefit a team like the Blue Jackets, who are willing to select a player like that.
It very well could. It depends on where they land on their list. So it's on the show with some shenanigans. And I got 3 questions for you here just to kind of give everybody something to think about, because the draft's it's a few hours away now, depending on when you watch this, or it might already be over if you're waiting until next week. So So here's the question. So here's for question number 1 for you. Give me one bold Columbus Blue Jackets prediction at the draft that you think will happen.
One bold prediction.
Be bold.
Somehow they find a way to acquire a 2023 first round pick.
Oof.
I'm going real bold, just right out in left field. I don't know. I don't. Yeah.
We wanted bold, and that's what you got. I'm going to say that Yuri Sikorsky goes to the Blue Jackets. Speaking of bold, so how could that happen? Shane Wright goes first to Montreal. Maybe New Jersey looks at Juracek or Nemec as one of the better players, kind of like the Cale Makar effect. You want to get one of the top D that have that upside. Arizona takes the center. And then you got a little bit of a wild card action with 4 or 5 where maybe Seattle takes a D and then Philadelphia takes one of the centers. And now all of a sudden Sikorsky ends up in Columbus at 6. I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Bold.
That's why it's bold.
Holy smokes.
Now, how about one for free agency? Bold prediction.
The Blue Jackets add a good center in free agency.
Oh, interesting. You have a name?
I don't
Okay.
have a name. I'm sorry. I'm not as studied on the free agent class as I should be. That's after the draft news for me.
That's okay. One bold free agent prediction.
What do you think, Malkin? Do you think Malkin?
Now, wouldn't that be something?
Oh man.
You would never have. I mean, that would be
so bold.
That would be so bold. Like, we have no idea how bold that would be.
Yeah.
Let's say they trade for Zach Cassian. How about that for bold?
Zach Cassian? That would be a good fit.
Big power forward that, Edmonton's trying to shave a little bit of cap.
Who for? Jake Bean?
A variety. It could be picks, could be a player. Change the dynamic of the forward core a little bit. Again, we're looking for bold. So
bold.
Yeah, for a trade, I'd say that's bold. And you mentioned Josh Manson earlier. I think one of the things that would be interesting to see is if they try to sign him. I think that he would just fit so well to what they're trying to look like right now.
Mm-hmm.
Last shenanigans question overall in the league. So it can be any situation that you want to talk about. One bold prediction for the upcoming draft league-wide.
You're killing me, Mark. The lack of preparation for these. Now I'm scrambling.
That's why there's shenanigans.
I'll say, what the heck? We'll say the Canadians find a way to get into the top 10 with a second pick.
It's pretty good. That's a good one. They're trying hard. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Makes me, the team that I wonder there is Ottawa. I wonder if they're talking with Ottawa about, could you see Josh Anderson on the Senators kind of thing? I'll say another one for Blue Jackets for going overall. Wonder if they contact Montreal about Jeff Petrie, just as a bold look.
Oh, wow.
This is a bold look. And then in terms of the overall, there's going to be some stuff going on in the top 10 to 15 that are going to be a little bit hair raising, I think. But I'm going to write about this, and it should be out on Thursday, so you should be able to see it. Watch Steve Yzerman try to bring Alex DeBrincat home to Detroit. He's from Farmington Hills, Michigan. The Blackhawks are all over the trade rumors with him. Watch that one. That's my bold prediction overall. DeBrincat to the Detroit Red Wings.
And your pick on where Lambert goes?
He's going to slip. I think he goes to a team with a second first, like Buffalo, or there's a chance he even falls out of the top 20. Like everything that I'm hearing is he's falling. I wrote something when I did my prediction before that he could go in the top 10. I think he's going to go sometime between like 15 to 25 range, honestly.
Wow. Before we go, Mark,
Yeah.
can you give a quick disclaimer for those who saw the Ryan McDonough situation? Just a little fake news disclaimer.
Oh gosh. Be careful what you see out there, even if someone has a blue check mark. Jarmo Kekalainen went public and said 100% inaccurate. In case you missed it, Nick Kyprios did the thing talking about some of the background, the supposed background to the Ryan McDonough situation, where either get traded to Nashville or we'll waive you, and there's an agreement in place with Columbus that they would pick you. 100% inaccurate according to Jarmo Kekalainen. Especially this time of year, watch your sources, watch your timestamps. Fake accounts are out. This is their breeding ground. Make sure you watch. Use your Twitter lists. Just make sure that you watch everything, because it's easy to hit that retweet button or that tweet button at this time of year with every little thing that goes around. Just be very careful. There's your disclaimer.
Beauty.
Nick, great show. Fans, thank you so much. This next week's going to be crazy. By the time we rejoin you again, the draft will have been completed. The first day of free agency will be done. So much to take in. We'll be here to react to it. Enjoy everything that you see, including the draft. It's 7 o'clock on ESPN on Thursday night, 11 a.m. on ESPN Plus Friday for round 2. And then on the 13th, free agency begins, high noon Eastern time. Have a great week. We will see you next time on Union Junction.